Hello, my name is Kevin Brunson, and I'm a member of the Altru support team. I'm here today to talk to you about exporting data from the system. In this video, we'll create an export definition and run an export to create a data file for use with other applications, such as Microsoft Excel. This feature deduplicates your exported data so records are only included one time when they have fields that would otherwise make them display multiple times. For example, in previous versions of Altru, if you had a record John Doe who had 3 phone types on his record, he would export 3 times, 1 time for each phone type. In this new version, John Doe will export 1 time with those 3 additional phone types on the same row. Let's take a look at how we set this up in Altru. In Altru, we can begin by going to Administration. In Administration, we go to Export Definitions. And here we're going to create a new export definition. On the Export Definitions page, we're going to select our source view. In this case, we're going to create a constituent export definition. On the new Export Definition screen, this is where we select the fields that we would like to include in our export. In this case, I'm going to begin by selecting my name formats. There's 2 specific name formats that I want to select, and I'd like them to appear separately in my output file. I'd like to have my informal addressee appear first, and I'd like to have my invitation mailing addressee appear second. To do that, I'm going to select the field name and put it in the output. I'm going to select to export one value, and I'm going to do selected name formats. I want to select the type field, and the first type that I want to include is my informal addressee. And I can select OK and OK again. At this point, I want to select the same field a second time, but this time I want to put a unique set of criteria on it. The first field that we selected, here, we selected the informal addressee type. Now we want to choose the invitation mailing type. To select the same field multiple times, but with a different criteria set, we're going to select the top field in our export, and then we can select the field a second time. When we click and drag it over a second time, we'll see that again we're given the criteria for name formats. In this case, we're again going to select to export one field. Again, we're going to select selected name formats, and we're going to filter on our type. This time, we're going to select our invitation mailing, and we'll select OK. You can repeat these steps as many times as you need the same field exported with a unique set of criteria. And in this example, I'm just using name formats. You could use this with any one-to-many field that you have in your database. For example, you might have interests where a person can have multiple interests, and you only want to see golf first, or you only want to see soccer second, or baseball third. We could repeat this same process for other fields such as interests or revenue amounts. Once we've selected all the fields that we want to display in the output of our export definition, I'm just going to grab an address field also, just to complete our mailing. We can go ahead and save and close our export definition. I'm going to call this our winter mailing export definition, and we can click OK. Once we've created our export definition, we now need to create an export process. To do this, we go back to Administration, and we're going to select Export. In Export, we're going to create a new export process. We can give it a name. This is our winter export process. And we're going to select the export type. In this case, we're going to select, and you'll have to click the drop-down arrow, Export Definition. When we select this, we can select which export definition we want to use. So I'll click on my search binoculars. I'm searching for my winter mailing export definition. And finally, we're going to select the selection. This is which records do we want to mail to, or which records do we want to include in our exported data file list. In this case, I've created a query earlier, and I've called it our winter mailing. This is a group of records that I want to include in my export definition. At this point, I can save my export. I've now created my export process, and it's now time to run it. So at this point, I can highlight my export process and select to start export. The export process runs, and when it's complete, we can download our output file. we can see that we have 10 records and all were successfully processed. At this point, we can download our output file, and we can select to name our file and save our file. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and open up our exported file, and I'll open it up in Excel. We can see that in the first column, we have our informal addressee name format. In our second column, we have our invitation mailing name format. And then finally, in our last column, we have the address line. Of course, you can select other columns of data to include as well. For this example, I just wanted to show that we can include name formats and include them in separate columns. And we'll see that we only have Derek Baker in our output one time with his 2 separate name formats. So to summarize, this new export feature is great if you need to export the same field multiple times with a unique set of criteria. In this example, we use name formats, but again, you can use any field in your database that you want to export multiple times. So as you can see, this export feature is very good if you need to export the same field multiple times with a unique set of criteria. Again, in this example we use name formats, but you can use any field in your database that you want to export multiple times with a unique set of criteria. Best of luck exporting. Thank you very much.